C.L.S. All-in-One, and today I'm going to show you how to repair a wooden fence without digging or using concrete. So what's happened with this fence is the posts have broken on both sides of this section of fence. So this post right here is broken, and on the opposite side this post is also broken. So we're going to have to remove this section of fence and both these posts. So this is the damaged part of the fence I'm going to be replacing, and in place of it I'm going to put new 2x4 cross members and new metal posts. Then after that's done, I'm going to restring all the pickets and make them facing the same way for a cleaner look. So fences are usually secured with nails or screws, so it won't be too hard to take apart. You're just going to find where the screws are and your nails are, and pry the nails loose or remove the screws. Your 4x4 post should be fairly easy to remove also. There might be a couple screws holding them in place, but normally they break at the base and they're very easy to remove. If any of the post is left sticking above the ground, you can just use a Sawzall to cut it off. Now I'm going to be splicing the two sections of fence together with a 2x4. You want to make sure you use a long enough 2x4 so it overlaps each section of fence by at least 2 feet. But if you have a fence that looks more similar to this, or the 4-inch face is facing out, you're going to have to mount the splicing boards a little bit different. So let's say the middle row on this fence has a 4-inch side facing out. We're going to mount a board in front of that overlaps it by 2 feet on each side. And then we're going to mount a board behind it to make the face flush on the back side. So here's an aerial view of the fence to help better explain it. This is a view where the 1.5 inch side is facing up, and that's what we're looking at. So if we splice in a 10-foot 2x4 to the face of the old 2x4 cross members, it's going to leave a gap behind it that won't be flush for pickets. So you need to add another 2x4 behind it so you have a flush face for the pickets. But this is an aerial view of the fence I'm working on today. The 4-inch side is already facing up. So when I splice in my 10-foot 2x4, it's already going to be flush on both sides for pickets. So there's no need for any extra lumber if the 4-inch side of the cross members is facing up. So to secure the 2x4s together, I'm going to use a torque head 3-inch screw and secure it with at least 6 screws on each side. More than likely, you're going to have situations where the 2x4s aren't quite going the same direction, so it's going to leave too big a gap to secure. But there's an easy fix for that. All we need to do is go to the back side here and loosen the top row of pickets, and then we can bend that board into place so we can mend it together. So I've loosened the top row of pickets here about 4 feet back, and now that's going to allow me to move this top cross member. So the 2x4s still are not going the same angle, but there's plenty of flex in them to where you can secure them together now. And now I'm going to use at least 6 screws to secure the splice on this end. Once you have the 2x4 secured together, go ahead and secure the pickets on the top row. Now we're simply going to repeat the process for the next 2 rows. We're going to overlap it on 2 feet on each side. Again, securing it with at least 6 screws on each end. And again, because the angles don't line up, I'm going to have to loosen the middle row of pickets about 4 feet back so I can mend the 2 boards together. And once the boards are secured together, I'm going to go to the back side and secure the middle row of pickets. Then I'm going to repeat the same process for the bottom row. So here's a look at the cross members. They're all secured. And now it's time to install some posts. So for the posts, I'm going to be using a 2 3/8 terminal post that's 8 feet tall. And I'm going to have to offset it from where the old post was, because there's going to be concrete in the ground. So I'm going to offset it about a foot to the right or left. For this particular fence, I'm going to move my post to the right about a foot. So if we move over a foot, that should give us plenty of room to miss the old concrete. So I'm going to use a level here and a straight edge to mark a line where I want my post to be. So we're just going to make that line level. Then I'm going to go ahead and mark the other post also. So to secure the metal post to the wood fence, I'm going to be using a grip tie bracket. These secure right to the posts, plus they secure to the wood on both sides with screws. And before we mount the bracket to the fence, make sure to loosen this middle bolt here all the way. That'll make it a lot easier to install the posts. To secure the brackets to the fence, I'm going to be using a T25 torque head screw 2.5 inch. So to start with, I'm only going to mount the 2 bottom brackets and secure them with 2 screws on only one side of the bracket. So here's a closer look. I'm doing just the bottom 2 brackets with screws on just one side. Now I'm going to slide a post into the brackets on each side. So here's a look at what we've done so far. We got our brackets installed on the bottom, and we got our posts put in them, but they're sticking about 2 feet above the fence. And that's where we're going to use this. This is a fence post driver. This fence post driver is designed for T-posts, but it has a big enough inside diameter where it works for terminal posts also. Before we start driving the post, we're going to want to check for level, and I'm actually going to have to go a couple inches forward to be level. So I'm just going to keep some pressure forward while I'm driving the post and get it about 6 inches in the ground, and then I'm going to recheck for level again. If it's still not level, just push whatever direction you need to while you're driving the post to make it level. Once it's about a foot into the ground, it should stay pretty straight from that point down. I have repaired many fences using this method, and I've only run into a couple situations where this method didn't work, and that was because there was too many rocks in the ground. But about 98% of the time, this works just like I want it to. So for the post to have good stability, you want to make sure it goes at least 2 feet in the ground. But if the ground's really soft, I would go another foot and make it 3 feet in the ground. Depending on how hard the ground is, you may deform the top of the post with a fence post driver. If it gets too deformed, you're going to have a hard time fitting the fence post driver around it. So you may have to cut off the damaged areas with a sawzall to continue using the fence post driver. Now it's time to go ahead and put on our top brackets. I've removed the bolts, so I can go ahead and slide this over the top of the post easily. Now we're going to drop it down into place and then secure it with screws on just one side. Then repeat the process for the opposite side. Now it's time to tighten the bolts for all the brackets. Once you tighten the brackets, it's going to suck the opposite side in about 1/2 inch, and that's why we wait to put screws on the opposite side. Once that bracket's tightened, go ahead and put screws on the opposite end of the bracket. And to secure these, I'm using the T25 Torque Head 2.5 inch screws. Okay, we got the posts in place, all those brackets are tightened, and all the screws are in place. But now, we got some metal posts here. You may not like the looks of a metal post, so I have a fix for that also. So to cover the posts, we're going to use 3 fence pickets. This is 3 1x6 fence pickets, and I'm just building a 3-sided box, and this will cover the brackets and the posts perfectly. Then we just secure the box right to the cross members. But this is just for looks. If the metal post doesn't bother you, don't worry about it. Now it's time to string some pickets. And to string the pickets, I like to use string line. So what I usually do is I put an 1.5 inch screw on one side of the opening on the very top of the picket. And then I do the same thing on the opposite side, and then I tie a string line between the 2 screws. You want to make sure the string line is nice and tight and that there's no sag to it, so you have a nice level line for your fence pickets. And the string line really helps you out where the ground isn't flat. If the pickets have to be staggered and match a certain angle, that string line makes it real easy for you to stagger those at the right angle. So to mount the pickets, I'm just going to mount the top of the picket even with the string and space it accordingly. So I usually just secure a picket with 1 screw first, then I check to make sure it's level, then I add the remaining screws. Then after that, I go about 4 or 5 pickets before I check for level again. With most fences, you should be able to reuse your old pickets. With this fence, I only had to replace a couple pickets. Well, I'm just about done now, just got a couple pickets left. It's looking pretty good. The advantage to doing it this way is you can get this done all in one day. You don't have to wait for any concrete to dry, you don't have to dig any huge holes. I was able to get this done in about half a day. Well, thanks for watching. This is C.L.S. All in One. If you want to hear more from me, please like and subscribe.